right. Yeah, I'm Kelly. I'm a third year PhD student, recently a candidate at Northeastern University. And I'm here to present our work, Precarious but Active, looking at privacy behaviors in Chinese transformative fandom. Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, so first, what is transformative fandom? You might be familiar with fans in general, whether they're fans of movies, books, TV shows, or celebrities. But there are different ways that fans might engage in fandom. And what we looked at specifically is what's known as transformative fandom in the literature, which is communities of fans centered on the creation of fan works, fan-made creative works that build off of and transform the original, such as fan fiction or fan art. This is an interesting space for privacy work because it's known in the literature as a female-dominated creative space. So people are able to actually make works themselves and share them. And it's actually a rare opportunity as well to not only have more marginalized voices be able to create non-normative or stigmatized creative works, but actually share them in community, like how at Pets right now we're able to talk to each other about our work instead of just being by ourselves writing up a manuscript no one would read. Yeah, so this community aspect is really important to the space. But at the same time, Chinese transformative fandom is greatly affected by the censorship of explicit and queer content in China. And this might actually show us some different goals from what might be other potential victims of censorship, such as those trying to voice political dissent because of this community aspect. So given this, what we wanted to look at was how the community is impacted by a censored and surveilled internet, and what this means for pets when community is important. To investigate this, we interviewed 10 members of Chinese transformative fandom who are often creators of fan works themselves. And we were able to ask them specific and frank questions about their experiences of privacy and censorship. We deliberately avoided Chinese ISPs, though, in order to protect participants, since they might tell us sensitive information that could even be grounds for arrest. Because of that, to augment this, we also looked at some social media posts. We manually collected 153 total posts and comments from Weibo and Xiaohongshu, all about privacy and transformative fandom. And as you can see here, these are large-scale, general-purpose social media platforms, which importantly are based in China and have overwhelmingly Chinese user bases. So I want to highlight a few insights from the work. The first of which was that fans had trouble accessing uncensored community, and this was actually a bigger problem than just their own digital literacy. So I won't go too much into the situation on domestic platforms in China, but something important there was that there was still a lot of community attempts to have community around uncensored fan works. And this often was in the form of using coded language or substituting censored terms for innocuous sounding ones, assuming that the audience could tell what they really meant. This continued presence in domestic platforms was particularly important because really the first point of failure of trying to go onto an uncensored overseas platform is that the majority of a given fandom might still be on domestic platforms, given that Chinese users would logically discover new communities, including fandom, on Chinese platforms. This can already be demotivating because if your particular fandom isn't on an overseas platform, there's not really a point to going over there if like the language is different, the interests are different. But this aside, there could be a couple different challenges of trying to go to an overseas platform. The first of which is knowing where to go. Here, the red and white website refers to AO3, which is a US-based website for hosting fanworks that was blocked by China in 2020, and is also the sole overseas option that appeared in our data set. But obviously, the red and white website is now a URL, and our social media data showed that not everyone seems to know what the URL was, which could have been because of the fact that people couldn't actually say the URL explicitly. They had to use coded language. Similarly, we didn't see a lot of mentions of VPNs or the term being used to refer to VPNs, which could have been evidence of limited knowledge or at least limited persistent communication of the tool you would actually need to get to a blocked platform. Instead, fans might land on the AO3 app. Unfortunately, AO3 does not have an app. This is actually what they would call a mirror site, which is an app that's trying to look like AO3, and it would actually scrape works from AO3. But some key differences. One, obviously, they aren't able to actually post and comment on the actual AO3 website. But it's also that these mirror sites will still be based in China, so it would still have similar censorship mechanisms. They would generally ask for a phone number instead of email, which in China is uniquely identifying, and would also ask fans to pay for fan works, which is not only just against AO3's general principles, but also opens fans up to potential extortion, or according to fans' own theories, makes the whole thing riskier now that money is involved. So overall, the lesson here seemed to be that movement required coordination, but fans could be lost both literally and figuratively without enough legible communication. In fact, with steep obstacles with domestic and overseas options, some fans seem to feel like the only real option left for uncensored community around fan works was to physically print and distribute their works, which is highly prohibited and has resulted in arrests. So this is something that China cracks down on. This is an example of the next theme I wanted to share, which was a tension between safety and freely engaging in community. Stepping back a bit, our interviewees did not have any issues accessing AO3, given that we required they could interview outside of China. But as this participant shared, since I'm overseas, I have many ways to publish my work, but if you make the barriers too high, people inside the firewall won't be able to see it either. This concern for reaching fans in China meant that although some users were deliberate about keeping their domestic and overseas accounts separate, others insisted on tying them together, such as by using the same username for both. This seems overly risky given that an adversary can easily now identify them. But something important to remember here was that their connections with other fans were part of the whole point that they were doing this. And so for some, it might feel too disappointing to have to start over somewhere else as anonymous. Altogether, this again shows that fans may be invested in community even to the point of rejecting safer solutions. And I didn't include it in this presentation, but something else we mentioned in the paper is also how this investment in community can even pay out in other forms of safety, namely being able to actively discuss with other fans their theories of risk and risk mitigation strategies, hence the title Precarious but Active. The final thing I wanted to talk about was how community was also relevant in that fans could be demotivated if it just felt bad, which peer censorship seemed to affect. On social media, it seemed like common knowledge that other fans were the biggest perpetrators of reports, or a peer censorship mechanism where any individual can report a post or website as violating state directives. So for a website, it would probably be blocked by the government. For a post, it would be blocked by that particular, or taken down by that particular platform. And so because of this, there's a feeling that it's fan against fan right now, especially in this environment of reporting. But some parts of our social media data also seem to hint at how things might have been different in the past. Will we ever get back to the world we had back then, where different groups wrote gifts for each other and everyone knew to just take disagreements to private forums? So this kind of hints at how there might have been less intense practices of resolving conflict in the past, but increasing censorship features, especially peer censorship, were able to exacerbate peer threats, overall worsening fans' experiences of the community. Putting everything together, we argue that when community is important to users, we need to consider not just how pets might enable individual goals, but how they can resist erosion to community health. This might be in tension with privacy goals on one hand, making fans have to choose between privacy goals and community goals, as we saw earlier with potential compromises to their own safety. This, on the other hand, might also indicate community-level privacy goals, such as how fandoms seem to be unwillingly shaped by an oppressive environment, with no clear path to reversing it. This led us to propose two main points at which the pets community might take community into account. First, we might be inspired to attack new problems, investigating the impact of privacy and censorship threats within community. For example, our results seem to show the importance of visibility and intact communication in fans being able to talk to each other. So we might consider how this tension with privacy goals might be eased, or at least fans being able to have better control over the trade-offs that they make. Second, we might also consider how we think of pets as successful in the first place, investigating the use or impact of a pet within community. This might show us lens into adoption challenges beyond just the usability of a pet, as well as potential unintended consequences. For example, while our interviewees seem to actually deliberately stay connected to domestic community on domestic platforms in a lot of cases, if they were to take the most private route for themselves, which I'm sure many have, fandom left on domestic platforms might be then leaking members without knowing why. That's all I have. So thank you for listening. And yeah, I didn't make a poster for this, but I'll just be around. So please feel free to come up to me to discuss this more.